Stabby McChacha asks, Genshiken, Showa Genroku, Rakugo Shinju, Fune wo Amu, Kids on the Slope, Onihei. Watch these titles and give an impression on each, please. I have not watched Genshiken. I've read a bit of the manga. The manga's great. Showa Genroku, obviously, just an amazing show. Second season is great so far. Fune wo Amu, have not watched that yet. I'm in the process of watching it. It's one of the things from last year that I just still haven't finished. Kids on the Slope, Sakimichi no Apollon. That's great. Best thing Mappa has made. Onihei. So that's airing this season. As you might have guessed, I have not gotten to winter 2017 yet. I'm still, watching last season because I'm always a month or two behind. But since you've mentioned it, I'll give it a shot, and I'll reply to you when I finally get to do it. Black Ocean asks, who's your favorite VA? It's Kana Hanazawa. What can I say? She's just the best. She voices the best girls all the time. She's great. Anything that has a relatively good dub but has Kana Hanazawa in the sub, better watch it sub or else I'll be angry. Henry Dude Star has two questions. First of all, toffee or caramel? I don't really have an opinion on that. I like both of them. They're both great. And what is your opinion on Doctor Who? When I was a little bit younger, I tried to get into Doctor Who. I watched a bit of it. I like Doctor Who, from what I've seen. But I think I'd have to watch more to develop a stronger opinion on it. The one thing I can say is that David Tennant is my favorite Doctor. Kaliki asks, what is the worst anime you've watched? Well, I try to stay away from textbook bad anime. I haven't watched Mars of Destruction or Shitcom or any of those ones that everybody totes as bad. The worst one I've watched would have to be stereotypically Charlotte. Another bad one would be Comet Lucifer. Both of those series had a lot of potential, but kind of just made me angry. 2. What anime have you seen that you thought was bad but others thought was good, and vice versa? This is kind of a hard answer for me because my opinions on most anime are pretty vanilla. Like, I like the things that most other people like. Of course, according to the comment section of my Charlotte video, especially nowadays, a lot of people like Charlotte, apparently. So I guess you could count that one. In the opposite direction, I really can't think of any, There's a lot of things that are rated low, but when you get into a conversation with anybody talking about it, they'll say it's good, like Flip Flappers or Kyosogege or Metropolis or something like that. So those are all examples of things I really like that don't have necessarily good scores, but that doesn't really mean anything. 3. If you could live in an anime, which one would it be? I'm assuming this means that I'm just like a civilian, I'm not really part of the story, I just live in the world. Most anime worlds would either be the same as the real world for the normal person or just really shit. But ones that come to mind that I think would be cool to live in would be maybe the Psycho-Pass world or Darker Than Black. And finally, do you have any pets? Yes, I do. I have a dog. He's a cross between a poodle and a golden retriever, and his name is Cody. Office Prone asks, what do you do for a living? I am a first-year engineering student. So, I do math for a living, basically. Bean Butch asks, sorry if I butchered that. Can you make another drunk review? Well, that was kind of like really off the hook, and I was just inspired by the show to do it. Because I had recently watched Goat Jesus' review of The Garden of Words and, some Mr. Plinkett stuff. It's always a possibility, but I can't really, say to myself, okay, I plan on doing this. I wouldn't put it out of the question, though. Kenji asks, thoughts on 3x3s as an evolving art form? Do you have a 3x3? Well, that's a pretty loaded question. I don't know how to answer that, honestly. I think 3x3s, if I was just to give a completely serious answer, I think some of the 3x3s that I see on Twitter are actually really, really cool. And there was this one that had a red and dark blue color scheme and just used these very obtuse symbols from whatever anime or whatever it was on. I can't exactly remember. And I thought that it's, they're definitely works of art. And the 3x3s I've made are pretty shit. So I'm not going to post them. N543576 asks, Thank you very much. That was one of my favorite videos, and I'm glad you liked it. Would it be possible for you to read the manga Solanin by Inio Asano and do the same thing? So I've heard a lot of good things about Solanin, and it's really short, which is good for me. My only thing about that is, well, there's two things. First of all, you know, NHK kind of like moved me in a way that made me want to make a video about it, so that's kind of like riding on whether Solanin also does that. And second of all, I haven't read as much manga as I have watched anime, so I'm not sure if I would feel comfortable talking about it. I mean, if I was gonna make a video on Solanin in the same way that I made a video on NHK, how much manga I've read probably shouldn't affect it, but we'll see. I'll definitely give it a read. Roger asks, do you think Kyosogiga had any influence on anime after it, excluding Kekai Sensen? And if so, what do you believe it influenced? So, perhaps in the future we'll see more series overtly referencing Kyosogiga, but Kyosogiga in itself is a reference and pays homage to a lot of things like Alice in Wonderland. So I kind of think that, you know, any sort of connection we make between a series that came after Kyosogiga and just say, oh, well, Kyosogiga influenced, is kind of a dangerous assumption to make. Like, for example, Flip Flappers. There's a lot of Kyosogiga-ness in Flip Flappers, I think. But it's, you know, whether the director of Flip Flappers watched Kyosogiga is, you know, completely up in the air. It's just that they took from the same material, Alice in Wonderland. I think, you know, as time goes on, we might see more Kyosogiga-esque things. You might see more series using manga panel layouts, like they did in Kyosogiga. But I think that it would have to rely on actual people involved in whatever series to straight up say, we watched Kyosogiga and we tried to emulate it. Basically what I'm trying to say is that Kyosogiga pulls from so many older texts that it's more likely that any series in the future will pull from that instead of Kyosogiga itself. And of course, just combine that with how unpopular it is. Julia asks, what was your first anime and favorite romance series? My first anime, I don't know, like probably Pokemon or something like that, you know, just watching on television. The first anime that I like deliberately watched that I knew was anime was probably Dragon Ball Z, Naruto, that sort of thing. Yeah, I was big into Naruto when I was a little bit younger. Favorite romance series? Off the top of my head, it's gotta be Akagami no Shirayuki Hime. It's just great. It's a breath of fresh air. It's not set in high school, which I love, and all the characters are just amazing, lovable. It's just a great show. The Dragon asks, why are you a smelly bean? Reviews by Andre asks, what made you start making YouTube videos? I've been making YouTube videos for a really, really long time, like since, you know, for probably 8 or 9 years now. But what made me start making anime videos was probably Demolition D. He is my favorite, still my favorite anime YouTuber. His videos are top notch. He's funny in a way that really appealed to me. As for like my, you know, just not like inspiration, but just for me personally, I wanted to talk about anime, like have a forum for my thoughts. And you know, you can usually just do that through a blog or a YouTube channel. And since I had already had experience in making videos, I figured I should make videos. Erado asks, what's your opinion on the Crunchyroll Awards and what would you do to make it better if applicable to your answer? Just don't make it a popular vote. I really did not pay attention to it. I didn't vote in it. I don't even know what the results are, except for because I watched the Giguk video. So yeah, I really didn't pay attention to it. Yeah, just don't make it a popular vote. That's pretty much it. What was your earliest anime-related experience that made you want to get into it more? So when I was, I can't remember what grade it was. Maybe like tail end of middle school, something like that. Maybe the start of high school. I can't remember. But anyways, it was like a film studies class, and we watched Spirited Away. And the first time I had watched it, and when I watched throughout the movie, when I watched it, I just had this feeling in my chest, like it was undescribable. It was like I was like, Jesus Christ, this stuff is amazing. So I think that's what really pushed me into wanting to watch more anime. Of course, most of the stuff that I've watched after Spirited Away is pretty crap, but I don't know, you find some good stuff sometimes, right? Who are your biggest YouTube inspirations, if any? Well, I've already mentioned Demo. I also really like a lot of educational YouTube channels, like I like Vsauce, I like CGP Grey, I like Numberphile, and of course Pause and Select, Joe. He's really pushed me to make my videos more researched and more academic. Yeah, all those channels that I've listed are inspirations for me. What was your favorite show of last year? I will save that for the top 10 video I am going to put on my second channel. Is there any show besides Kyosogiga you plan to cover in depth that you can recommend to your fans? So I am like knee deep in Kyosogiga right now, and I probably will be for a very long time with, you know, the slow rate of my videos. But for this foreseeable future, I would say watch Flip Flappers if you haven't yet, and watch She and Her Cat and She and Her Cat Everything Flows, because those are just good on their own anyways. And I'm definitely making a video on Flip Flappers, and I might be making a video on She and Her Cat. So if you haven't checked those out, I would say go for it. What's your thoughts on collabing, and do you have any planned soon? So I actually talked about collabing in my recent blog post, and I'll link that below so that you guys can read it. I know Arado already has. But yeah, that'll kind of give a more in-depth answer as to my thoughts on collabing. What is your favorite non-anime show that very few people know, if any? I don't know. I actually don't watch that much stuff outside of anime. I watch films, of course. But as for a show that very few people know about, I'm not actually sure how popular it is, but what comes to mind for me is Over the Garden Wall, which is a 10-episode short series for Cartoon Network. It's very absurdist comedy, dark humor sort of thing. It's about two kids who get lost in the woods on Halloween. It's a really good show, and it's like, I think the running time overall is like only 100 minutes, so if you have 2 hours to kill, go watch it because it is amazing. What has been your most memorable interaction that has spawned from you doing YouTube videos? So there's a couple that come to mind. One of them is when Digibro commented on my Kiesniver video. You know, just to get someone that popular commenting on my little video, that was pretty awesome. Another one was when I did the Keijo first impressions with Michael and Kenji and Roger and Brian and Joe. That was a fun time. How much does your YouTube persona of a chill, smart, quiet dude reflect your everyday life? So I have a pretty run-of-the-mill introverted personality. When I'm around people I don't know too well, I'm pretty quiet and reserved, but when I'm around my close friends, I am really, really obnoxious. I like to help people. I don't know, that sounds kind of weird, but basically, you know, I'm the kind of guy who people ask for help on their homework. But eventually people stop doing that because they think I'm pretentious. And finally, would you ever plan to show up on podcasts or anything? So I mentioned this in the aforementioned blog post, but I'll just reiterate it here that I have nothing against podcasts. If someone invited me on a podcast, I would totally be down for it. I haven't been on a podcast in a really long time, actually, and that's probably just because I suck at them, but whatever. It's not like I want to be on them or anything. Baka. Mega Uber Duber says, what anime are you looking forward to in 2017? There's actually a lot of things I'm looking forward to. Off the top of my head, there's a lot of second seasons coming out for shows that I really like. Uchoton Kazoku, The Eccentric Family, is coming out. The second season of My Hero Academia. Maybe Steins Gate Zero is coming out this year. Little Witch Academia is airing right now, of course. The second season of Rakugo. So yeah, there's a lot to look forward to. I'm also excited about the two-part OVA, The Dragon Dentist, which at the time I'm saying this, the first episode's already been released. I haven't gotten the chance to watch it yet, but I was a really big fan of the original short film that was a part of the Japanese Animator Expo, so I'm looking forward to watching that. Nate asks, would you ever consider reviewing older anime? The fact that I haven't made stuff for older shows is purely coincidental. First of all, I haven't watched a ton of older shows just because, you know, I'm a young person. I've just basically watched all the popular stuff. But I wouldn't put it out of the question. It just might take me a while to get to. Just Try asks, when will you upload more, you beautiful seaman demon? Well, I'm flattered, and the answer is no. Kuro asks, what anime did you get into in 2016? I actually watched a lot of anime in 2016, and that top 10 video will be on my second channel. What will you watch this year? That sort of ties into the previous question. Why wasn't Kyosogege dubbed? It is getting dubbed. It is having a release this month, according to Discotek. They were going to release it last year, but apparently there were some delays. And I'm going to pick one up, a copy of it, the Blu-ray up, as soon as it gets released, even though I will probably still highly prefer the sub. What are your favorite anime? I don't really have like a concrete list of favorites. Of course, my favorite anime is Kyosogege. I also like Fooly Cooly, Evangelion. Bakano is one of my favorites. Hyoka, Psycho Pass, Cowboy Bebop, Gurren Lagann, Shinsekai Yori, Yuru Yuri. Another big favorite of mine is Darker Than Black. For movies, some of my favorites are Sword of the Stranger and Akira. For Ghibli films, my favorites are probably Spirited Away and Whisper of the Heart. I'm also a big fan of the short film Senko Roll, as well as another short film called Tsumiki no Ie. Yeah, pretty vanilla taste. Adam asks, question, why does your voice sound like the color beige? I don't know, Adam. Why don't you go sham around somewhere else? Nathan says, get good, scrub. Well, I can't get good if I already am, boy. Someone whose name I am not going to try to pronounce says, what makes an anime endure through time according to your criteria? Well, aside from the more obvious, less quantifiable things like, does it have good directing, does it have good cinematography, does it have characters that resonate with people, I think an important part of it is the time that it's released. Most obvious example, or two examples, first is Evangelion, released right after the Aum gas attacks and the Kobe earthquake. It resonated with people, it made people feel something, and of course there's tons of literature talking about that sort of sociological effect that Evangelion had when it was released. Another obvious example for us in the West is Cowboy Bebop. Aired on Adult Swim, was a lot of people's gateway anime, following up with that Fooly Cooly to a little bit of a lesser extent. But yeah, if we're looking at it from a smaller scale, I think first exposure is a big part of it as well. And you can kind of see the trends with how people get introduced to anime. You'll have these big landmark anime that are really popular that will, of course, always be remembered. Stuff like Death Note, Haruhi, in more recent times, Attack on Titan, and Sword Art Online. Just because of the sheer volume of people who, that was one of their first anime that they watched, they're going to remember it. And, if you look at people's favorites, there's always going to be things on there that are among the first shows that, really got them into anime. For myself personally, Darker Than Black was one of the first shows I watched. That's one of my absolute favorites. I would bet that had I been into anime like in the early 2000s, then, there would be other shows that I would really like and I would count among my favorites. But those were the things that I was exposed to when I was younger, and those are the things that still stick in my mind. So yeah, good question. I hope I answered it at least a little bit for you. Alamian, among other things, asks, who is your waifu? Well, if my previous answers haven't made it clear already, my waifu is Shirayuki from Akagami no Shirayuki Hime. And I could talk for hours about why that is, but I'll just leave it at this. Usama asks, what do you think of art as a whole, and what do you think is good art in any medium? Well, you use the word I like to use in your question, and that word is beautiful. I like to look for beauty in art. It's a pretty good catch-all term for good art. Like, you can use it to describe music, film, animation, literature, poetry, paintings. Yeah, so different people have different definitions of what they find beautiful. If we're gonna zoom in on anime, I usually try not to let the art style affect whether I like a show or not, but of course I have biases. Like, for example, Kyosogege is probably my favorite art style. Saiba has a whole army of favorite things that he's asking about, so I'll only go over the ones that I can definitively answer and I haven't answered already. Manga, favorite is Berserk. YouTuber, probably right now, Casually Explained, although there's others. Fake website and anime. I kind of like @channel from Steins Gate. Most hated thing in your life. I don't like it when people are intolerant. Band, probably Foster the People. I know that's kind of basic of me, but they're like pretty much the only band that I can truly say I don't dislike any of their songs. Song, don't really have one, it shifts like the wind. Game, Transistor. Browser plugins, I really like Cloud to Butt and Hoverzoom. Hoverzoom is amazing, I love it. Gay Dojinshi, I would suggest looking up Cocoa Break if you're in the market for smut. Website, well, the one I frequent the most is probably Reddit. Other than that, I really like lollysleep.moe, if you know what I'm talking about. Art form, probably music, and culture, Japanese or Irish. Maz, with the only question I received on Twitter, asks, how big of an Earthbound fan are you, and what other games do you like? So I'm sorry to disappoint you, but I actually haven't played Earthbound, I just really like the soundtrack. Playing it is on my bucket list, but I haven't gotten around to it. I don't know when I am going to. The reason I used Earthbound in the video is because there's this Dark Souls video that this guy used Earthbound music in that I watched one time a long time ago, and then I was like, oh wow, this is pretty good. And then I listened to the entire soundtrack, and it was really good. And then what other games do you like? Well, I am a big fan of Undertale. I really like Legend of Zelda as well. As I said just, one question ago, Transistor is my favorite game. The game playing in the background is Ori and the Blind Forest. That's a really good platformer, and I've been trying to 100% it for a while now. I also play League of Legends on and off. I used to play a lot more, but as time went on, I just played less and less, and now I'll probably only, play a couple games a month with my friends. I used to play a lot of ranked by myself, though. I'm a big fan of Dark Souls. I've played the 3 main installments. I haven't played Demon Souls, and I don't have a PS4, so I haven't played Bloodborne either. The first video game I owned was Pokemon Red. My mom bought me a pink Game Boy Color from a garage sale, so that was my first video game system that I owned. And the other game that I sunk a lot of time into when I was younger was RuneScape. Even today, I still get waves of nostalgia whenever I see stuff about RuneScape. I'm still subbed to the RuneScape subreddit. So yeah, it's like pretty much objectively a horrible game, but I still love it. I just have to stop myself from playing it because I know it'll just take up all my time. The Dick Ratter has a couple questions. How's it feel to be a filthy Canadian who's not Joe? Well, it actually feels pretty good because I'm not living in the United States. Have you made the Hunter x Hunter 2011 yet? What? What are you studying, if anything? Studying engineering. Thoughts on Trump? Pretty bad. Thoughts on Trudeau? Slightly worse than average. Why don't you ever talk in the Discord? Because I'm too busy doing math. Why don't you ever upload? Because I'm too busy doing math. Will you start ending your videos with praise be to Togachi's name? Nope. Will you ever give me a shout out? Yep, doing it right now. Guys, go subscribe to the Hunter x Hunter 2011 Dick Riding Association Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Spotify, My Anime List. Best association ever. President's a pretty cool guy too. I think he's also a really big fan of Hunter x Hunter or something. I'm not really sure though. And the final question comes from Cyanide Blizzard, Michael, and he asks, will 2017 be the year that we're flooded with content? And unfortunately, I would have to say no. I am trying to write more on the blog and make more kind of impromptu videos so that, I can put more content out there. But as for written stuff, it's going to stay at the same pace, if not slow down, just because, I'm in university now and it's even more busy than I used to be. As you can tell, it's really hard for me to make videos during the semester. During the summer, we'll see what happens. I might be getting a full-time job, I don't really know yet. So, yeah, we'll see what happens.